Good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another Bible story reading. I'm so glad you're here. It's early. It's a sunny day. I wanted to get this reading done for you just as soon as I could. I have a lot to do today. For those of you joining for the first time, welcome. I'm glad you're here. What we do is we go through the different stories of the Bible. This is for people who either have forgotten the stories, have only read bits and pieces of them, or only know maybe what somebody else has told them about the stories in the Bible. But we want to give you an opportunity to hear the entire stories for yourself and learn for yourself. That way, if they come up in conversation or you're curious about things, you actually know what the story says, not what somebody has told you, not just a little bit and piece of it. We've been going through, we just started the story of Daniel. We started that yesterday, and we started with chapter 1. So many people know the stories of Daniel, Daniel in the lion's den. They know about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but they don't know some of the things that led up to what happened to in those particular stories. Yesterday, we learned that Daniel and some other men of the royal family a whole bunch of people were taken into captivity in Babylon, but the Babylonian king, Nebuchadnezzar, wanted some men from the royal family to be his servants, and he wanted them to be strong and healthy men. Their names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and Daniel. But he had their names changed. He had Daniel's name changed to Belteshazzar. He had Hananiah changed to Shadrach, Mishael changed to Meshach, and Azariah changed to Abednego. So they're moved to this new land. They've had their names changed. The king was going to make them eat his food. They denied his food because their food was not what God wanted them to eat. So they only ate the food that God wanted to. And as a result, they got stronger and they ended up being healthier and finding favor with the king. Now we move on to chapter 2. In the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams that troubled him, and he slept, and sleep deserted him. So the king gave orders to summon the magicians, mediums, sorcerers, and Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. When they came and stood before the king, he said to them, "I have had a dream and am anxious to understand it." The Chaldeans spoke to the king. Aramaic begins here. "May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give an interpretation." The king replied to the Chaldeans, "My word is final. If you do not tell me the dream and its interpretation, you will be torn limb from limb, and your houses will be made a garbage dump. But if you make the dream and its interpretation known to me, you'll receive gifts, a reward, and great honor from me. So make the dream and its interpretation known to me." They answered a second time, "May the king tell to his servants, and we will make known the interpretation." The king replied, "I know for certain you are trying to gain some time because you see that my word is final. If you don't tell me the dream, there is one decree for you. You have conspired to tell me something false or fraudulent until the situation changes. So tell me the dream, and I will know you can give me its interpretation." The Chaldeans answered the king, "No one on earth can make known what the king requests." Consequently, no king, however great and powerful, has ever asked anything like this of any magician, medium, or Chaldean. What the king is asking is so difficult that no one can make it known to him except the gods, whose dwelling is not with mortals. Because of this, the king became violently angry and gave orders to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. The decree was issued that the wise men were to be executed, and they searched for Daniel and his friends to execute them. Then Daniel responded with tact and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to execute the wise men of Babylon. He asked Arioch, the king's officer, "Why is the decree from the king so harsh?" Then Arioch explained the situation to Daniel. So Daniel went and asked the king to give him some time so that he could give the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and told his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah about the matter, urging them to ask the God of heavens for mercy concerning this mystery, so Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of the Babylon's wise men. The mystery was then revealed to Daniel in a vision at night, and Daniel praised the God of the heavens and declared, "May the name of God be praised forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. He changes the times and seasons. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals the deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. I offer thanks and praise to you, God of my fathers, because you have given me wisdom and power. And now you have let me know what we asked of you, for you have let us know the king's mystery." Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had assigned to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He came and said to him, "Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me before the king, and I will give him the interpretation." Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said to him, "I have found a man among the Judean exiles who can let the king know the interpretation." The king said in reply to Daniel, whose name had been changed to Belteshazzar, "Are you able to tell me the dream I had and its interpretation?" Daniel answered the king, "No wise man, medium, magician, or diviner is able to make it known to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has let King Nebuchadnezzar know what will happen in the last days. Your dream and the vision that came into your mind as you lay in bed were these. Your Majesty, while you were in your bed, thoughts came to your mind about what will happen in the future. The revealer of mysteries has let you know what will happen. As for me, this mystery has been revealed to me not because I have more wisdom than anyone living, but in order that the interpretation might be made known to the king and that you may understand the thoughts of your mind. Your Majesty, as you were watching, suddenly a colossal statue appeared. The statue, tall and dazzling, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was terrifying. The head of the statue was pure gold. Its chest and arms were silver. Its stomach and thighs were bronze. Its legs were iron, and its feet were partly iron and partly fired clay. As you were watching, a stone broke off without a hand touching it, struck the statue on its feet of iron and fired clay, and crushed them. Then the iron, the fired clay, and bronze and silver and the gold were shattered and became like chaff from the summer threshing floor. The wind carried them away, and not a trace of them could be found, but the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. Your Majesty, you are King of Kings. The God of heavens has given you sovereign power, strength, and glory. Wherever people live, or wild animals, or birds of the sky, he has handed them over to you and made you ruler over them all. You are the head of gold. After you, there will arise another kingdom inferior to yours, and then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which will rule the whole earth. A fourth kingdom will be as strong as iron, for iron crushes and shatters everything, and like iron that smashes, it will crush and smash all others. You saw the feet and toes partly of a potter's fired clay and partly of iron. It will be a divided kingdom, though some of the strength of iron will be in it. You saw the iron mixed with clay, and that the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly fired clay. Part of the kingdom will be strong, and part will be brittle. You saw the iron mixed with clay. The peoples will mix with one another, but will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with fired clay. In the days of those kings, the God of the heavens will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. And this kingdom will not be left to another people. It will crush all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, but will itself endure forever. You saw a stone break off from the mountain without a hand touching it, and it crushed the iron, bronze, fired clay, silver, and gold. The great God has told the king what will happen in the future. The dream is certain, and its interpretation reliable. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell down face down, worshipped Daniel, and gave orders to present an offering and incense to him. The king said to Daniel, "Your God is indeed God of gods, Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, since you are able to reveal this mystery." Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many generous gifts. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and chief governor over all the wise men of Babylon. At Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to manage the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained in the king's court. What a long chapter. That was chapter 2. I think I may have said chapter 3, but it was chapter 2. And there's a lot for us to unpack. There are 3 ways that we look at these scriptures when we read them. What does it say? We have to have reading comprehension. You have to actually read it, or you don't know. What was it saying to the people of the time? We have to understand the story, the context in which it was written, the history, all of that. And what, if anything, is it saying to us today? Well, what we just read is that in the 2nd year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar was having dreams. He had these very disturbing dreams. He called for the magicians and the diviners and the fortune tellers, if you will, and said, "Hey, I want you guys to interpret my dream. And the way that I will know if your interpretation is correct is if you can tell me what I dreamed." Now, imagine waking up in the morning and saying to your friend or your spouse lying next to you, "Hey, I just had a dream. Tell me what it was." They don't know what you dreamed. So these magicians and Chaldeans, these diviners, they said, we can't do that. Nobody could do that. That is impossible. And the king's like, "Well, what you're going to do is give me a false interpretation if I tell you what the dream is." So he gets angry that they're trying to get this information out of him and that they're false. And he decides he's going to have all the wise men put to death because they're not wise if they can't magically know what he dreamed about. So Daniel, in his wisdom, says to the guard who was coming to take them away to have them executed, he says, wait, give me a minute. Give us a minute and see if we can figure this out. He tells Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he says, "We need to pray. Let's ask God to reveal this mystery to us and so it'll spare our lives." And God does. God gives Daniel a vision of what the king dreamed, and he also gives him the interpretation of the dream. So he goes to the king. He says, "This is what you dreamed." And we read all about the dream, the iron and the clay and everything. And he explains to them, he says, kingdoms are going to come along that destroy you. Then there's going to be this divided kingdom. Then he talks about a kingdom that will never be destroyed, and this kingdom will not be left to another people. If we did an in-depth study, a real deep study of Daniel 2, we would see that more than likely refers to the kingdom of heaven, to Jesus's kingdom. Remember, if you've watched some of my videos before, you know that I tell you that the things in the Old Testament often point to the things of the New Testament, and how beautiful it was that even then God was preparing his people and letting them know that one day, he would send Jesus, whose kingdom would never be destroyed. And that is a heavenly kingdom. Well, Nebuchadnezzar is so impressed that Daniel was able to give the interpretation of this dream. He was able to tell him the dream and give him a reasonable interpretation of it. And because of that, he made Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego head of all of these different provinces. It'd be like they were mayors and governors and things of different places. But Daniel got to remain in the king's court. He was an advisor from that point on to the king. So such a fascinating story. Sometimes I love how Daniel gives praise to God. He says, "You are the God who reveals mysteries. You're the one who seats kings, who removes kings." He also recognized when he spoke to Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar, that God had given Nebuchadnezzar the authority over everything. That it wasn't that Nebuchadnezzar was so powerful that he just took that authority, but that God had given it to him. And Daniel is grateful to God, and he respects the authority that God has placed him under. Even though he may not have liked being in exile, remember, he came from royalty where he was before. And now here he is praising God, giving God credit, turning to God for answers. And because he is obedient and faithful to God, God continues to spare him and put him in good positions within the king's court. That's what we have today. I hope you learned something. I hope you got something out of this. I look forward to us continuing with the story of Daniel. I'll talk to you later. Have a great day.